So, on that note, let me invite onto the stage President Trump.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Have a seat.
I like that crowd. That's a nice group of people. Thank you very much.
Standing ovation.
Thank you.
President Trump, thank you for doing this, as we said. And you heard the reception there. The business people of Chicago, like everywhere else, they like a lot of the things you want to do in terms of tax cuts and some of the spending proposals. But like many business people, what they're often worried about is the cost. And the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, which is a bipartisan outfit, put out some predictions the other day. If you add up all the promises you've made, and your plans would add $7.5 trillion to the debt. That's more than twice the total for Vice President Harris. You're on course to push up debt up to 150% of GDP. This is a very business-like audience.
Yeah.
Why should they trust you with that?
Because we're about growth. She's got no growth whatsoever, and we're all about growth. We're going to bring companies back to our country. You look at, even today, as I was driving over, I see these empty, old, beautiful, like steel mills and factories that are empty and falling down. Some have been converted to senior citizens' homes, but that's not going to do the trick. And we're going to bring the companies back. We're going to lower taxes still further for companies that are going to make their product in the USA. We're going to protect those companies with strong tariffs, because I'm a believer in tariffs. I'm not sure that you are. I don't think you are, but I congratulate you on your career. But to me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff, and it's my favorite word. It needs a public relations firm to help it, but to me, it's the most beautiful word in the dictionary.
Tariffs, do you think that will bring in the revenues? To use another bipartisan group, Peterson Institute, they say they'll only bring in $200 billion. That is that's barely the cost of 2 of your promises.
Yeah, but that's like, for what company are you talking about, okay? Look, I've brought in with tariffs, and I was just getting started. Then COVID came, and we had because I tell you what, I did a very good job in COVID. Nobody knew what the hell it was. I call it the China virus because I like being a little more accurate. But when that came, but we got hundreds of billions of dollars just from China alone, and I hadn't even started yet. But tariffs are two things, if you look at it. Number one is for protection of the companies that we have here and the new companies that will move in, because we're going to have thousands of companies coming into this country. We're going to grow it like it's never grown before, and we're going to protect them when they come in, because we're not going to have somebody undercut them. And I could give you an example of this if you want. Would you like me to? Because it just happened.
Give me a quick example, then I will come back.
I just found out about it. So I've been talking about for the last year about Detroit and how horribly it has been. It's just horrible, because we've been talking about Detroit's coming back for 40 years, and it's never come back. And it's very dependent on the car industry. Well, they've lost 60% of the business over a long period of time. And what happened is I found out a friend of mine builds auto plants. That's all he does. He builds auto plants. That's what he's good at. He doesn't want to build an apartment. All he wants to build is, and he builds the biggest in the world. And for the last year and a half, if anybody's heard me speak, I was talking about Mexico as a tremendous challenge for us right now. Tremendous. China is building massive auto plants in Mexico. And they're going to build them, and they're going to take those cars and sell them into the United States. They're very near the border. And they're going to have all the advantages and none of the disadvantages. And that's going to be the end of Michigan. It's going to be the end of, frankly, South Carolina. Going to be the end of everything. So I've been talking about this, and I said to him about 9 months ago, I said, you know what? I want you to do me a favor, John. His name is John. I don't want to give his last name because he might not like it. But I said, I want to see an auto plant. I want to go and see one of these. You press a button and everything works, right? I want to see one of the big ones. He said, all right, good. I said, where do we go? I'd like to go to Michigan. I'd like to go to someplace in the United States. He said, no, we can't do that. Why? We're not building anything big in the United States. That's not where we don't build the big ones here. I said, where are you building the biggest ones? He said, in Mexico. We're building giant plants, the biggest plants anywhere in the world. In Mexico, I said, so you mean they're going to make cars cheaply? They have advantages over labor and other things, and they're going to sell them into the United States, and they're going to put Michigan out of business. Is that what? I don't know anything about that. All I do is build the plants. If you want to see a plant, we'll go to Mexico. I'll show you the biggest plant in the world. That was 9 months ago. I saw him, and I talked about it all the time because I think it's a serious threat to our country, because not only autos, but other things. So then I see him 2 days ago. I was talking at another club, very nice club, and like this, except, I don't know, I think you people are probably even wealthier, okay? This was in Detroit, okay, which was appropriate. And I was showing them all sorts of charts about how their car, it's just gone down. It's like terrible. And I saw him, and I said, oh, how are you doing? How have you been? I said, could I ask you, how are those plants that you mentioned, those giant plants that you're building in Mexico, how is that coming along? Have you finished them? No, sir. They abandoned the project when they heard you're running. They abandoned the project when they saw that you were winning and doing well. I said, wow, isn't that beautiful?
All the same.
Because I told them, and I said it publicly, they're not going to sell one car into the United States. I said, if I run this country, if I'm going to be president of this country, I'm going to put a 100, 200, 2,000% tariff. They're not going to sell one car into the United States because we're not going to destroy our country. Because I know you're an anti-tariff guy, but I'm the exact opposite. If I had, there was no other way I could have stopped them other than, what am I going to do, negotiate with Mexico or China? You're not going to get anything from that. I said I'm going to put a 100, 200, or 300. I'm going to put the highest tariff in history, meaning I'm going to stop them from ever selling a car into the United States. So I just see the guy by accident. I see him. He says, sir, they've abandoned and by the way, they built foundations. They were really rocking. They were going to do it. They thought that I was going to win, or maybe they're just holding off. I tell you this, if I don't win, those factories are going to wipe out this country. They're the biggest factories ever built for cars. They're going to wipe out our country. If she wins, and she doesn't know what the hell she's doing. If she wins, she's not going to be thinking about, I couldn't, every speech I made having to do with cars, but every speech I made having to do with tariffs, I'd mentioned that our country is being threatened by Mexico. Now, all of those things, beyond even the car companies, all of those things are now dead. They're dead. I asked him, will they start? Probably not. They're dead as a doornail. If she gets in, it'll start up again.
President Trump, I'll let you give your example.
No,
you talked a lot about tariffs. You look at the American economy, 40 million jobs rely on trade. It counts for 27% of GDP.
Okay.
If you cut that off, that's also going to have an effect on many, many business people here.
Yeah.
Tariffs also have another side. Isn't that something that you have to acknowledge?
No.
You could be plunging America into the biggest trade war since Smoot-Hawley.
But there are no tariffs.
You're going to stop. There are tariffs already at the moment.
There are no tariffs. All you have to do is build your plant in the United States, and you don't have any tariffs.
But people, in a lot of places like this, there are a lot of jobs that rely on foreigners coming here. You're going to basically stop trade with China. You're talking about 60% trade on that, 60% tariffs on that. You're talking, as you said, 100, 200% on things you don't really like. You're also talking about 10, 20% tariffs on the rest of the world. That is going to have a serious effect on the overall economy. And yes, you're going to find some people who will gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive.
I agree it's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Well,
let me just tell you, I know how committed you are to this, and it must be hard for you to spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong. It'll have a negative, it will have, I'll go a step further. If you don't do this, this country has no chance.
40 million jobs is a lot of jobs to rely on.
They're all coming back. You've lost
jobs. Those are 40 million jobs in America that rely on trade.
Are you ready? John Deere, great company, they announced about a year ago they're going to build big plants outside of the United States, right? They're going to build them in Mexico.
And you threatened
they're also going to build.
They stopped.
That's right. I said, if John Deere builds those plants and not selling anything into the United States, they just announced yesterday they're probably not going to build the plants, okay? I kept the jobs here. and I'll keep John Deere will stay here. And I'll tell John Deere, if you do build outside of the United States, you can if you want. For instance, India is a very tough country. It's not only China. You know, China is the, I would say, probably the toughest. But there are a lot of tough. You know what's very tough? European Union. Our beautiful European countries, wonderful, wonderful. If you add them up, they're almost the size of us. They treat us so badly. We have a deficit. I said to Angela Merkel when she was there, she's not there anymore, I wonder why, but when she was there, I said, Angela, how many Chevrolets do we have in Berlin? Why, Donald, you have none. He said, that's right. How many Fords do we have in Frankfurt? I don't know, none. I said, that's right. You know how many cars we have? Mercedes-Benz, BMW, all of the different Volkswagen, millions and millions of cars. And then I said farm products. You know, they don't want our farm. They don't want anything from us. We have deficits that are crazy. And we're not going to have them anymore. We're going to put tariffs on them. And they're going to do, and you know what they can do? The Mercedes-Benz will start building in the United States. And they have a little bit. But you know what they really are? Assembly, like in South Carolina. But they build everything in Germany, and then they assemble it here. They get away with murder because they say, oh, yes, we're building cars. They don't build cars. They take them out of a box and they assemble them. We could have our child do it.
Can we come back? Let's come back to the Europeans in a second. What about consumers? People out there.
They're going to be the biggest beneficiaries.
Yeah, critics say your tariffs will end up being like a national sales tax.
Nope. The countries will pay.
If you have America at the moment has $3 trillion worth of imports, you're going to add tariffs to every single one of them. That is going to push up the cost for all those people who want to buy foreign goods.
Now, what's going to happen?
That is just simple mathematics, President Trump.
It's not. Yeah, it is, but not the way you figure it. I was always very good at mathematics. Yes. Let me tell you, you're saying $3 trillion. Those companies, and they don't have to pay. And the higher the tariff, the more likely it is to have them come into the country.
The higher the tariff, the more you're going to put on the value of that piece, those goods, the higher people are going to pay in shops.
Ready? The higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States and build a factory in the United States so it doesn't have to pay the tariff.
That will take many.
No, it will go quickly.
Years.
In fact, I'll tell you, you know, there's another theory is that the tariff, you make it so high, so horrible, so obnoxious that they'll come right away. When I do the 10%, 10% is really, first of all, 10%, when you collect it, is hundreds of billions of dollars. The numbers that you're talking, all reducing our deficit. But really, so there's two ways of looking at a tariff. You can do it as a money-making instrument, or you can do it as something to get the companies. Now, if you want the companies to come in, the tariff has to be a lot higher than 10%, because 10% is not enough. Guys, they're not going to do it for 10. But you make a 50% tariff, they're going to come in. Let me tell you the other thing about tariffs that's great. Our steel companies, as you know, 3-4 years ago, they were all when I was in office, I saw a man from a big steel company, and he was devastated. I knew him for a long time, and it's been a tough business. It was a great business many years ago, and I would not let U.S. steel be sold to Japanese, by the way. It's psychologically, I think it would be a
That's the
terrible
Nippon
thing.
Steel, as you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't let it be sold. But I would stop it if it hasn't been completed by the time I'm president, because I think it sets a horrible tone. But I had a lot to do with steel. We were going to lose all our steel companies because China, as you remember, was dumping steel at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And I put a 50% tax on that and tariff on that, all dumped steel. And it was also bad steel. It was what they call dirty steel. It wasn't good steel, which is a bad thing for structural components of buildings and planes and things like that. They were dumping crap into our country. And I put a 50% tariff. I started at 25. I raised it to 50 because the 25 didn't quite do it. I raised it to 50, and that did it. They stopped dumping steel. And I saved our steel mills by having that. We saved it. We saved our steel. Now, what was left, because we've lost so much, but there are certain companies you have to have. There are certain things you have to have. Steel, you have to have. If you go to war, you know, there's a possibility you go to war. I kept us out of war. I was the only president in 82 years that kept you out of a war, except I defeated ISIS, but I inherited that war. There were no wars. And by the way, And I think it's very important. We can go, I call it the weave. You can call it, you have the weave as long as you end up in the right location at the end. But while we're talking about it, we have never been so close to World War III as we are right now. With what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and the Middle East.
Well, let's.
I had no wars in the whole world. Think of it. And I talked them out of wars. I talked plenty of countries out of wars. I had the whole world, other than ISIS, which I inherited, and I knocked out ISIS in a matter of weeks. It was supposed to take 4 to 5 years. I did it in a matter of weeks. We actually have a great military. We don't know how to use it, but we have a great military.
With great respect, I was asking about tariffs. You've gone off about that. Seeing you brought up tariffs and foreign policy, many people would say the biggest problem with your tariffs is actually geopolitics. You, in your first term, you got some credit for effectively saying that there was a Cold War against China. That's what America was in. You look at the last Cold War against the Soviet Union, America won it in part because it rallied allies to it. You're talking about slamming allies with 30%, 20% tariffs. Isn't this time you're going to end up trying to rally the West and you're dividing it instead? Isn't that the real problem with tariffs, even beyond all the problems to do with the economy, where you keep on bringing up these individual examples, but the overall effect is going to be dramatic?
No, the overall effect will be...
Answer first about foreign policy.
Yeah, I'll do that.
How does it help you take on China?
It helps
turning all your allies against
tremendously, because China thinks we're a stupid country, a very stupid country. They can't believe that somebody finally got wise to them. Not one president, Bush, Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, have you heard of him? Not one president, think of it, not one president charged China anything. They said, oh, they are a third world nation, they are developing. Well, we're a developing nation too. Take a look at Detroit. Take a look at our cities. We're a developing nation. We have to develop more than they do. We're way behind them. You take a look at what's happened to our cities. So what I'm saying is this.
My question was about your allies, not about China. You are going to annoy the people
our allies,
to rally behind you.
But our allies have taken advantage of us more so than our enemies. Our allies are the European Union. We have a trade deficit of $300 billion with the European Union. Our allies are Japan. You know, Abe was a very good friend of mine. He was a great guy, great. And I said to him in Japan, he was assassinated. And he was a great man. He really was. I didn't see too many like him. And he got very sick and he had to take off. And then he was actually making a comeback. He was going to make a comeback and he would have won easily. But he was a great gentleman, handsome, wonderful man, respected by everybody. And I went to him and I said, Shinzo, we have to talk. What? Trade. And he goes, I'll never forget it. I know. I said, what do you know? I knew you'd come to me. Why do you say that? Because I can't believe, I wouldn't tell the story if he was alive, actually. He said, I can't believe how many years it's been that nobody even negotiated with us in America. I said, Shinzo, you have to pay for your cars. You're sending millions of cars. You don't accept a car from us. You don't have one car that you accept, and yet we're selling 3 million, 4 million of your cars. I said, Shinzo, on agriculture, you won't even accept our agriculture. And I renegotiated the whole trade deal from a little disadvantage because I was stuck with a bad deal. I mean, I got stuck. We have trade deals that were so bad that I said, who are the people that are doing it? They're either very stupid or they're getting paid off, okay? It's one or the other. It's very simple. We had the worst trade deals all over the world. South Korea, I love South Korea. They're wonderful people, extremely ambitious. They have a money machine. We protect them from North Korea and other people. North Korea is very nuclear. I got along with him very well, Kim Jong-un.
Yes.
But wait, they don't pay us anything. And I said, this is crazy. If I didn't put tariffs on, you know, the motor company, the car companies, they make most of their money at small trucks. I put tariffs on China, but I put 27.5%. Otherwise, we'd be flooded with Chinese cars. And all of our factories would close. We'd have no jobs at all in the auto industry. That goes for electric, by the way, which is a killer, which I've explained, and I don't think I have to bore anybody by talking about it. But I put tariffs on South Korea because they were sending in trucks. And I put tariffs on, fairly substantial tariffs. Do you know that our car companies make almost all of their money with the small trucks, SUVs and small trucks? If I took those tariffs on, you would be inundated. Every car company would be out of business. And I got calls from Ford. I got calls from everybody saying, sir, I can't believe you're doing this for us. You saved our company. They make all their money with this. They make most of their money with the small truck and, the SUVs.
Many consumers ended up with more expensive cars. But let me just come at you on foreign policy.
You wouldn't have a car company.
You have said that Taiwan should pay for US protection.
Yeah.
I ask because this morning you just mentioned North Korea. The Chinese army, literally as we speak, are engaged in rehearsals for a full naval blockade of Taiwan. So I suppose my question to you, if China invades Taiwan, would you send American troops to defend it?
Well, the reason they're doing it now is they're not going to do it afterwards, okay? So they're doing it now. They want to do it China now. Look, I had a very good relationship with President Xi, and a very good relationship with Putin, and a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un, who has a nuclear force that you won't even believe. And by the way, today it was announced for those that he just blew up the railroad going into South Korea. That means South Korea is now cut off from Russia and China and various other places. Cut off by rail.
Mr. Trump, you just mentioned...
No, but these are big things. I have to mention them.
Yeah, you just mentioned Putin, though, and this has been this controversy of the past week. Can you say yes or no whether you have talked to Vladimir Putin since you stopped being president?
Well, I don't comment on that, but I will tell you that. If I did, it's a smart thing. If I'm friendly with people, if I have a relationship with people, that's a good thing, not a bad thing, in terms of a country. He's got 2,000 nuclear weapons, and so do we. China has a lot less, but they'll catch us within 5 years.
That sounds very
If I have a relationship, I don't talk about that. I don't ever say it. But I can tell you what, Russia has never had a president that they respect so much, but more importantly, or less importantly, I guess, I went into Russia and people said, oh, he likes Putin and Putin likes him. Let me tell you, the first thing I did was terminated Nord Stream 2. Nobody ever heard of Nord Stream 2. It's a pipeline from Russia to Germany and all over Europe. I said, wait a minute, to NATO. I said, so let's get this straight. My first meeting, I said, so Putin's building the biggest pipeline in the world. He's going to Germany, but all over Europe. And you're paying him billions of dollars a year, billions of dollars a month. Germany's paying billions of dollars a month. And we're supposed to protect you against the guy that you're paying all this money to. So is there something wrong with my thinking? So he's building a pipeline to Germany, and we're spending, and by the way, until I got there, we were spending almost 100% for NATO because we had all these delinquent countries. They weren't paying. When I got there, I said, you know what? And by the way, my biggest fan is Stoltenberg, just leaving, Secretary General of NATO. He said, when Bush came in, he made a speech and left. When Obama came in, he made a speech and left. When Trump came in, he made a speech and he said, let me see your books. And I found out in the books that nobody was paying. There were only 7 countries that were paying. We were supporting NATO. They screw us on trade so bad, the European nations. And then on top of that, they were screwing us on the military. So they're taking a tremendous advantage of us, $350 billion deficit on trade. And we're then supporting them. In other words, it's not sustainable. You can't keep doing this. You can't have that, China, all of these countries. And stupid people made these deals. I saw trade deals that were so stupid that you'd have to be, that was so bad that you'd have to be an idiot to sign them. And we signed them for years. I could tell you trade deals that I have never seen anything. I said, who would agree to this? They had to be corrupt. They had to be corrupt. To make those deals, they had to be corrupt because there is no way a rational human being, I always say either corrupt or extremely stupid, because there's no way a rational human being would ever sign the trade deals that this country signed. And I got out of many of those deals. I told South Korea, I'm sorry, you're going to have to pay for your military. We have 40,000 troops over there. You're going to have to pay. You become a very wealthy country. Just to finish, you become a very wealthy. They said, no, 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 we will not pay. We will not. We haven't paid since the Korean War. I said, no, you got to pay. I said, would $5 billion a year to start off with? No, they went crazy. They agreed to $2 billion. I got $2 billion for nothing. And I said, here's what we're going to do. They said, we can't agree to this because we have to go through Parliament. They have the Parliament or whatever their legislature is. I said, that's okay. I fully understand that. Make it $2 billion. But next year I'm going to talk to you again. And I was going to make it $5 billion. And they knew it was coming. The happiest people to see that it was Biden instead of Trump with them, South Korea. You know what they did? They cut off the deal that I made where they were paying us. They backed to nothing because they went back to Biden and they gave it to him for nothing. They were willing to pay. We have 40,000 troops in harm's way, very serious, because you have North Korea is a very serious power. They have tremendous nuclear power. And I said to South Korea, you got to pay. And they agreed to do it. And Biden then cut it back, and it's a shame. And I could tell you 50 deals. And if I were there now, they'd be paying us $10 billion a year. And you know what? They'd be happy to do it. It's a money machine, South Korea. You're going to mention Taiwan. You wanted to mention Taiwan.
You mentioned Taiwan. You said you would defend them. You also seemed to imply that Putin, you would not. Putin, you seemed to imply that you had talked to him without actually confirming.
I said I don't comment on those things.
What about? Can I ask you a particular thing about the dollar? You talked about wars at the New York Economic Club. You said that if you lost the dollar as a reserve currency, it would be like America losing a war.
Yeah.
You look at what you're going to do in terms of protectionism, drive countries to use the other currencies, and all that debt is also going to lessen the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency.
If I'm
you worry about that.
The dollar is so secure, your reserve currency is the strongest it'll ever be. And no country...
You said, President Trump, at the moment there is a thing called the Trump trade in the markets. Do you know what that is? The Trump trade is very simple. People are betting that your policies are going to drive up debt, they're going to drive up inflation, so they're going to drive up interest rates. Are the investors wrong?
Yeah, I had 4 years no inflation. I had 4 years no inflation.
But that was when you had much...
I had 4 years. It's better than that. And Biden, who has no idea where the hell he is, okay? Biden went 2 years with no inflation because he inherited from me. And then they started spending money like drunken sailors. They spent so much money. It was so ridiculous, the money they were spending. They were spending on the Green New Scam. The Green New Scam, the Green New Deal. You know, it was conceived of by AOC +3. She never even studied the environment in college. She went to a nice college. She came out, she just said, the Green New Scam. She just named all these things.
But President Trump, the issue, the markets are looking at the fact you are making all these promises. Latest one was car loans. You're flooding the thing with giving giveaways.
But we're going to grow.
I was actually quite kind to you. I used 7 trillion. The upper estimate is 15 trillion. People like the Wall Street Journal, who's hardly a communist organization,
yeah, but you don't know.
They have criticized you on this as well. You are running up enormous debt.
What does the Wall Street Journal know? I'm meeting with them tomorrow. What does the Wall Street Journal know? They've been wrong about everything. So have you, by the way. You've been wrong about it.
You're trying to turn this. You're trying to turn this.
You've been wrong about it.
No, you're trying to turn this into debate. There are business people.
But you're wrong. You've been wrong. You've been wrong all your life on this stuff. You've been wrong. No, let me tell you about currency.